Dean of Boston Evening News. For 38 years, Jack Hynes has witnessed history from the front lines of journalism. But tonight, he shares his thoughts on the events that changed our lives. Take a look back with pictures that have never been seen before.
Hey, Mac, what time you got?
I got time for the Charles and Jack show.
You know, we did the usual thing. We played records. We goofed around a lot. We did a lot of Bob and Ray kind of stuff.
Wait! I'm sweating!
I was fortunate in that I was able to grow up with television, because when I started in South Bend, Indiana, back in 1955, television news was really kind of an innovation, especially in a small station. We did a 10 o'clock newscast every night, and I was the sole anchor. We had 2 cameras on the show. We had no teleprompters. We had no videotape. We had no film, for that matter. It was almost like a BBC broadcast in which you'd sit behind the desk and read wire copy. As you anchored the show, you would also do the commercial. So during the course of the show, you would pause in the middle of the newscast and say, "We'll be back in a moment, but first, this message from Champagne Velvet Beer." And then we came to Boston, and I remember traveling around the city, and we would listen for a story from police and fire radios to see where there was something happening that we could go and cover it. And then, of course, that film had to be processed, and I had to write the story and then edit the film.
Good evening. Tonight, former Governor Endicott...
We were doing the 11 o'clock news on Channel 5, and it ended at 11:15. The media really liked Jack Kennedy. They liked the campaign. The press sort of became part of almost part of the campaign team. They were covering it so closely. Jack Kennedy was elected and went to the White House. The access to the media was far more open than it had been during Eisenhower's administration. The whole tenor of the country was different. The mood of the country was different. So there was this tremendous buildup that just exploded with those gunshots in Dallas. I don't think the real impact of Jack Kennedy's assassination really hit me until we were doing the show that night. Jack Crowley, a cameraman, and I went over to Vietnam in 1968 to travel virtually throughout the country, because the press at that time in Vietnam, surprisingly, had carte blanche. You could go out into the field, interview kids from the Boston area. Becoming objective becomes a habit, really, after a while. You sort of learn to distance yourself from the story and keep it at arm's length and study it and report on it very factually, given the information you have or what you're able to observe. So I found myself fighting a personal involvement in that particular case. Other than that, objectivity goes with the job, really. It should. I think one of the more dramatic moments in television came when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and the impact of this medium was brought home very, very solidly, that television can and does go anywhere. "You remember Malcolm X?" I said, "No, I don't remember. I never met the guy." He said, "Of course you did." He said, "At the old Hi-Hat. Remember Red? He used to hang out by the door there." I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "That's him. Red is Malcolm X." He said he got in a jam, went to prison, became converted to Islam, and converted his entire life, and came out with a mission, and changed his name, and the rest is history. Well, at the time, Martin Luther King had really emerged as a national figure. John Henning and I had the opportunity to interview him in the basement of the temple out here in Brookline, and we were both questioning him relative to the movement, the civil rights movement, particularly the marches down south that were taking place at that time. Television, as it did for so many other things in American life, brought sports right into the living room and brought it in close up. Television improved the quality of sports in making athletes better athletes, and making coaches better coaches, in making the game more refined. The decade of the 80s was the me decade, where people felt they could do pretty much as they please. That whole generation sort of felt, well, this is just going to go on forever. You know, buy a new car, buy foreign cars, buy clothes. There was no one in the White House in the Reagan administration telling us that perhaps we were going in the wrong direction. In fact, they were encouraging us to go in the direction we were going.
Our tax cut, we think, was very instrumental in bringing about this economic recovery.
So sooner or later, the bubble had to burst, and it did. One could almost picture Ronald Reagan out at his ranch in Santa Barbara saying, "You mean there's no more communists? There's no Soviet Union? There's no Cold War? Now what do we do?" So our whole attention in this country is looking for new direction, looking for some sort of a new focus. You know, we've seen many changes in television news over the years, but I think one of the more important changes is the fact that a great majority of people depend on television for their news. And recognizing that, those of us who are in the business have got to pay attention to the fact that television news is journalism first and foremost. All the ancillary activities, the graphics, the music, the glitz, that's secondary at best. So we have to exert our responsibility to take the job that we have very, very seriously, that this is serious business. We're not in the entertainment business, we're in the news business.